Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you like what you've been hearing, please share it with your family and friends, anybody who you think would enjoy it. I love making this show, and I want to keep sharing these stories with everyone. The word-of-mouth exposure really helps. Thanks.
Hey, nice Atypical Daydream t-shirt.
Thanks. It's my favorite podcast.
Mine too. But where can I get a t-shirt?
It's easy. The link is in the show notes.
That is easy. I'm gonna go get one right now.
That's a great idea.
Thanks. Bye.
You bet. Stay cool.
So him and I would just sit and basically trade drugs and drink. And we were kind of in this weird space, basically where we were both addicts, just sitting there trying to recover.
Hello, my Atypical Daydreamers. Welcome to the show. My guest today is Kate Marlene, a therapist, mediator, and fellow podcaster. Kate's story is a cautionary tale, and a familiar one to me as we both suffer from the same disease of perception, also known as addiction. You could travel the whole wide world looking for freedom, but wherever you go, there you are. And I'm sure you'll have brought all of your baggage with you.
I was living in New York in around 2010, 2011, and it was an interesting time for freelancers and people who were interested in kind of living on the road or in an unconventional way, being able to work off of your laptop. And I was actually paying so much rent in Manhattan that I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually live cheaper out of a suitcase. And I was kind of looking for ways out of my life, though I wouldn't have described it that way. During that time, I'd actually gotten engaged. And when we were planning the wedding, I remember my dad had given me some money to pay for the wedding and to, I guess, start our life together. But I remember looking at the amount in my bank account and I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine spending this all on a wedding when I had just all these dreams of traveling and really getting out of my life and exploring. And I remember saying to my fiance at the time, I said, look, we have all this money, let's go to Italy or let's travel the world. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he even said, what are you, a teenager? You're just gonna run away? And I was like, actually, yeah, if you don't wanna come, then I'm gonna go. And there were other problems. I had found out was addicted to Oxy. And, we both had been living in addictive patterns. And so in some ways, that was also something I wanted to escape, but I didn't have the solution for that at the time. It was what can I do to get out of my life and change things and change myself? And in some ways, travel was that answer for me was, okay, if I can get out of this situation of place, of feeling attached, of feeling stuck, then I can find a new way of living and really relating to myself. And at the time I was 29 and turning 30, and I think it wasn't an accident that's when I felt so much pressure to settle down. Everyone around me was getting married. My sister already had 2 kids. My brother had 2 kids. And that was kind of my only options. It was either get married and start that life or blow it all up. And I took the money. I did ask my dad, I was like, can I just take, because it was the most money I'd ever had in my bank account. So I was like, can I just take this and go traveling? And he said, yeah, that's fine, but I'm not paying for another wedding. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did have to break off the engagement because, my ex he wasn't interested at all. Looking back, I didn't really know him that well. I think I had a fantasy of who we would be and who we could be together, but it wasn't what it was. And so I knew I wanted to make it around the world, but I had no precise destinations. And I kind of just would let myself be led by, basically who was in my life, who was kind of inviting me to be with them. And there was a friend of mine from college, and he was like, let's go to Costa Rica. And so we flew down there, we, had a Jeep and like drove across the country. And I was still trying to figure out like a path, but I remember telling him like, I'm really scared. Like, I don't know how to do this by myself. And it's just kind of funny because Eat, Pray, Love had also come out during this time, and it was like the book and then the movie, and there was so much romanticization around female travel and solo travel. So it was like this cultural movement, but it was also coming up against my own personal need to figure out another way that felt counter to all of these normative things. And as I said, there was also this undercurrent of like my own addictions and my own issues that I think I was probably running from, but I couldn't have really seen it that way at the time. It was just like, ooh, travel. Like as long as I can move forward, then I'm also moving forward. So from Costa Rica, I went to Australia. I was in East Asia for a while. And the thing that became really profound to me, like over the first months, was I felt like I really wanted to bond with people. And I would basically like fall in love with people wherever I was. So it's like when I was in Bali, I met this surfer guy. He was probably 10 years younger, and we would just like ride around on his motorcycle and go to weird clubs. And I remember when I got to Bangkok, he like followed me there. And it was this short, but like very intense period where it feels like love. It feels like something because you don't really have anything else to hold on to. It's like, I remember crying to someone being like, I hate saying goodbye to people. And yet that's kind of what traveling is this way of being in the world that you're not attached and you don't have any real connection, not only to place, but you don't really have connection to people either. So I had also kind of cut myself off from family at the time. I had been sexually assaulted by my uncle the year before. This was like not something that consciously was like driving me. But when I look back, it's like, and I've noticed this with a lot of travelers and expats, like so many people are running from something. And in that way, travel took on, especially foreign travel, like took on a different meaning for me. And it was like, we all want a new experience, and there's something profound about that, wanting to explore the world and find yourself. But there's a tension in that too. There's, as much as you're propelling yourself forward, there's also things you're leaving behind or things you're failing to mend or recover from in your past. So depending on where I was, there was this sense of like, I want to attach, I want to build something, but at the same time, always wanting to just like keep going.
Hey, it's Josh. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. And if so, are you wanting more road stories? Well, good news. I've got you covered. Consider becoming a patron. You'll have access to loads of great bonus stories that there just wasn't time for. And you'll be supporting a truly independent podcast. Find the link in the show notes. And thanks. Now back to the show.
When I got to Bangkok, because I had this extra money in my bank account, I was like, oh, I think you can get cheap plastic surgery here. I had remembered hearing that. And so I Googled like breast implants Bangkok and found this hospital there. And they were doing all kinds of plastic surgery for really cheap compared to US prices. So I was like, I had looked at getting implants in California, and it's like, $10,000 or something, where in Bangkok you could get surgery for like 2,000 euros or something, or dollars. So I had been emailing with this sort of androgynous personality. It was like, I think it might have even been a bot, but it was like, telling them what you wanted, what size of implants, things like that. And I was just, and this kind of like just show up. So I get to the hospital in Bangkok, and, it's like medical tourism, which is really a thing, but it was this romantic kind of version of like not just plastic surgery, but medicine itself. So the nurses were on roller skates and just, flying around the hospital. And they had, their intake papers and stuff, but everything was, supposed to be fun. And you get into the hospital and all the people are lined up on the bench. And, it is a bit like an assembly line, like just calling people in, and the doctors don't speak English that well. But I was really in a place of fuck it, it really was so reckless because I just didn't care about, I just didn't care. I really had no sense of what the risk was of going into it. And I had read that it was safe. So they take everyone really quickly, get their numbers, get their measurements, and then they slot you in for surgery. And it's so crazy because even when they're putting you under, to anesthetic, you're it looks kind of like a runway with all of these gurneys, and you're just one in the line. And so you just kind of wait till you get closer, and then they put the mask on and you go under, and the surgeon's waiting to just take people really quickly in the lineup. The thing was, I was all by myself. I didn't tell anyone in my family that I was even having surgery. And I was just thinking, oh my God, I really hope nothing happens. And then the thing with going under with general anesthetic is, you're about to get cut open and they have complete control over your body, but you also know that it's going to feel like a split second. So then you wake up, and that's really what happened. All of a sudden I woke up, I couldn't feel my arms because they had done the incisions through my armpit and had cut some major nerves right in my arm. So I was freaking out because I couldn't move, and the nurses are just trying to calm me down. And it was strange because it was almost like a spa setting. They wanted you to feel like you were really having this peaceful, calm experience, but really you're having major surgery. And I basically, to fast forward, everything was fine, but they gave me tons of drugs and then just kind of sent me on my way. So I got out of the hospital and just I still had the bandages, and I was kind of just okay, where to? And so I took a train up to Chiang Mai, and I met another guy who he had just been hit by a truck. And so he was from Canada. His arm was all messed up. His legs were broken. He had all of this, I remember just these crazy flesh wounds, but he also couldn't go back to Canada because he had a warrant out and he was trying to recover from his truck accident. And so we would just sit in this, I used to call it the Veterans Hospital because it just looked, the way it was laid out was this, I think it actually was an old hospital that they had turned into a hostel hotel. And so him and I would just sit and basically trade drugs and drink. And we were kind of in this weird space where, I said, I couldn't really leave because I was still kind of recovering from my surgery and he couldn't leave. And basically we were both addicts just sitting there trying to recover from our injuries. And he, looking back, he was one of the people that I really bonded with. And again, it's this weird toxic situation where we didn't have anybody else. And it was this really intense relationship, purely based on us being stuck in a foreign country and trying to make sense of this just really bizarre situation. And it was one of many relationships I had with people when I was traveling where it would have never made sense anywhere else. You have these relationships with people completely out of context. And if you met them in your normal daily life, you would never become so bonded or become so entrenched in their lives. I remember taking him to the hospital and having to get involved in his recovery too, because I was the only person he had. And in the meantime, him and I, like I said, we were drinking a lot. We went out one night and I had my purse and my passport got stolen. So I had no money and no credit cards or anything. And we had actually gotten kicked out of the hotel for, I think, just being drunks. And so they kicked us out of the hotel. And so we were driving around in a tuk-tuk trying to find a place to sleep that night. And I think this guy felt sorry for us. So he took us to this abandoned apartment, in Chiang Mai. He's I think you guys can probably sleep here for the night. He opens the door and then we woke up in the morning. We're we're just like in some dude's apartment. Like I have no idea if he had broken in and like just let us sleep there. And we came out, we had no stuff. Like I just remember being like, what are we doing? Like, why are we even here? Again, I think other people travel differently. Like back then it was like, because of my own stuff and my own sort of chaotic life, like I definitely brought that with me, you know, everywhere I went. It was like, wherever you go, there you are. And that was kind of my experience where traveling. Like someone used to say, you know, this expression like flotsam and jetsam, like behind the ship, like it's just like you're just leaving a trail, like a chaos everywhere you're going. And so after I left, like I said, I kind of had to get away from this guy. He was having like a psychotic break, and he started accusing me of working for the government, being some kind of alien spy. Like he was having a psychotic break, and I was like, I don't even know. I really didn't know him, even though we spent some pretty intense time together. So I just remember having to really quickly like, okay, where's my passport? Where's my money? Like trying to get away from this guy. And again, it was more just like, what's my next move? It wasn't, how did you get into this? Or is this safe? It was just, okay, what's the next place on my destination list? So, you know, I had been in this series of like really chaotic situations, and what I wanted to be this forward movement of exploration was really getting out of situations. Okay, like how do I get out of this? Or how do I get away from this person? Or how do I try to solve something that I had caused? You know, it's always trying to move forward. And the way that I wanted to feel while traveling, this independence, this freedom, like the further I went, like the more that feeling went away. It stopped feeling like excitement. It stopped feeling like discovery. It started feeling like fear. And that surprised me because I had not been a fearful person. I had not really been someone who couldn't go a certain place. There was this point of burnout where it wasn't just the drinking and the drugs had caught up to me. It was the feelings that there's nowhere else to go. When you've run in every direction you can imagine, you stop running out of places to go. And that's kind of how I felt when I went back to California, was what would it take to be okay where I am? What would it take to choose to stay in a place and to have community or have something stable? I really wanted to know what that would feel like. But my identity almost had been caught up in this travel culture, this feeling of like being on the road. Like I kind of wanted that to be who I was, but it was hard to realize that that wasn't enough. And also I wasn't really okay with what that was. So this friend invited me to Berlin. Within 3 days, I felt that same feeling come back of, oh, gosh, I'm just now in another country having the same feelings. And I called a friend. He said, just eat some currywurst and go home. And I thought, okay. But in the meantime, I got on a dating app and I was like, I'll just, see if I can meet some people who speak English while I'm here. And then a few days later, I met who would become my husband. And it's funny because the day I met him, I called my dad. I said, okay, I met my husband. And my dad was just like, I'm sure rolling his eyes. He's like, well, slow down. But the thing was, I think it kind of reversed itself, because after doing all this escapism and travel, it's like, no. Now I just need that other solution that didn't work the first time. So I moved in with him within the month. Like we got engaged. I moved to Berlin. And then because I was doing it in a foreign country, it felt okay for me. I was like, well, I'm still traveling. I'm not stuck in my hometown or something. So maybe I can do both. And getting pregnant and having a kid in Berlin, then you're really in it. It was a commitment I had to make that I could not run away from. And for the first time in my life, there was no out. Even if I daydreamed about it, I knew in some ways that I had to stay put. And so even after going through recovery and learning these things about myself, like my tendencies towards escapism, even though I'm sober, it's like that stuff is still there for me. That desire to check out and the mythology, right, of running, and this idea that you can just give things up and start over, and that there's no consequences. Like that was, for me, travel was also a fantasy of transformation and starting over without having to really do work. I think it was this really extreme case of desire, of like pushing myself with this belief that there would be some end that I could hold on to. You know, I still consider myself somebody who likes to travel. There's still a romance in it for me. But even now, I have to really ask myself before I book a trip, am I escaping something or do I want this? And it's a fine line, I have to say. It's sometimes hard to know the difference.
I want to thank Kate for sharing her experience. Be sure to check out her podcast, Falling in Love is Easy, a podcast about what happens when love doesn't go as planned. Links in the show notes. This podcast is created and produced by me, Josh Caldwell. Music by Visual Aid, my side music project. General support and copywriting by Miranda Caldwell. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come back next time.